From the virtual newsroom of Impact Alpha, this is your Impact Briefing for Friday, October 9th. I'm Monique. The word of the week is Reconstruction. In a moment, we'll talk to Ann Price, president of the Insight Center for Community Economic Development, and this week's Agent of Impact. We'll also get a perspective on impact thinking from Sir Ronald Cohen and Dr. Sherece West-Scantlebury, whom I spoke with on a SoCap call earlier this week. But first, here's what you need to know in impact investing. There's a scramble to finance solar power for frontline health. Primary care clinics in Africa are critical to the COVID response, but many lack reliable electricity and even basic lighting. Emerging models are crossing energy access and global health with innovative finance, as demonstrated on this week's Agent of Impact call with nonprofit We Care Solar. We'll have a full roundup and replay next week. Accessible and affordable credit is key to small business success in India and Latin America. In India, where equity dominates impact investing, the lack of access to credit is slowing affordable healthcare, off-grid energy, and other high-impact products and services. A study by India's Impact Investing Council found 60% of India's impact enterprises are, in fact, creditworthy. In Latin America, the Collaborative for Frontier Finance and Soden Capital surveyed local capital providers. Even before the COVID crisis, the small business financing gap stood at $1 trillion. Now, a majority of capital providers say their portfolio companies each need at least $300,000 in working capital to rebound. Salesforce stood up its second corporate impact fund at $100 million. The tech giant will invest in cloud computing companies that target climate action, diversity and inclusion, education and workforce development that use Salesforce products. JPMorgan Chase, facing a concerted campaign against its role as the world's largest financer of fossil fuels, said it would align its strategy with the Paris Climate Accord. The bank will set emissions targets for the oil and gas, electric power, and automotive manufacturing sectors, and advocate for a price on carbon. And Insect, with a Y, is building out a high-tech vertical insect farm in France where it recycles waste to raise mealworms to produce sustainable fish and animal feed. The company's trifecta of trends, alternative proteins, carbon offsets, and novel farming systems attracted $372 million in new financing. So this week, Impact Alpha caught up with Ann Price for a wide-ranging discussion, including about Reconstruction, our word of the week. It's a word that has historical resonance, but also current power to reframe a future narrative.
And finding narratives that actually humanize Black people so that they can be seen as who they are and as deserving as people who, are human beings. I know it sounds so basic, but that's really at the heart of it.
We talked about centering Blackness as a way to move from the abstract to the real world of policy, investing, and other practices in order to create durable change.
It's not about a race Olympics here, right? Oppression Olympics. Who's more oppressed? It really is saying, how does this show up? And then how are we all ensnared in it? And if we do this, can it benefit all people, right? There's not a time in our history where Black women were doing well and other people were not doing well. It has never existed, right? If we think about that group specifically, literally, if they are doing well, then everyone else is going to be doing well. It's really that simple.
As architects of the next normal, everyone has a role to play in the reconstruction.
I think there's all sorts of ways and mechanisms that need to be utilized for us to bring this to our consciousness, right, and to be transformed. We just haven't had many ways of that. And I think this is an incredibly important time period.
Sir Ronald Cohen is sometimes called the father of British venture capitalism. For the last decade or so, he's been a champion of impact investing, and he's the author of a new book called Impact.
In order to be able to cope with the huge challenges of inequality, lack of diversity, and the environment, we're going to have to shift our companies and the investors in them to deliver solutions for us rather than to create problems. Now, what is the change that I'm advocating in my book? Impact, Reshaping Capitalism to Drive Real Change. I'm advocating something which is already happening in the world, that shifting our decision-making from risk return to risk return impact is what's necessary.
We were joined by Dr. Sherece West-Scantlebury, head of the Winthrop Rockefeller Foundation.
This really is a matter of just simply doing it. And that's all I got. This is a choice. This is a choice. You either align your values and your mission, and you do the kinds of things that Sir Ronnie talked about.
I asked Sir Ronald and Sherece for some inspiration to close the conversation.
I would like to quote the Spanish poet Machado: "There is no path. The path is made by walking."
I am a huge fan of Audre Lorde, and she says, "I am deliberate and afraid of nothing." This is that moment in philanthropy where we need to be deliberate and afraid of nothing.
See our profile of Ann Price and all of our agents of impact on Instagram at Impact Alpha. That's going to do it for your Impact Briefing this week. You can read all of these stories at impactalpha.com. Subscribers receive the brief and full access to Impact Alpha, including subscriber-only Agent of Impact calls. Go to impactalpha.com/subscribe and use code BRIEFING100 for $100 off. Thank you for listening, and thanks to Ann, Ronnie, and Sherece, as well as our producer, Isaac Silk. I'm Monique Aiken, VP of Programs at Mission Investors Exchange. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, please take a second to rate and review the show right now. It really helps us reach more listeners. And make sure you check back for next week's Impact Briefing. Till then, take good care.